So without further ado, the actual closing disclosure, this is page 1. There's going to be 5 pages generally of a closing disclosure. Page 1, as you can tell, matches pretty well page 1 of the loan estimate, and that is by design. The CFPB was thinking that a borrower would take that loan estimate that they received earlier in the transaction and then be able to compare it to this closing disclosure and easily track the changes, what was updated. So that's the design, and you'll kind of see that carried throughout in how the closing disclosure tracks the loan estimate in a lot of ways. So a lot of the same information on this page 1. A few things it does add are going to be things such as the settlement agent's file number, and then a little bit more contact information for parties such as the seller, and then you also have an MI cert number on there as well. As we continue on through page 2 of the closing disclosure, we get into the costs. And so once again, this lines up with page 2 of the loan estimate, which discloses the cost. Once again, we have those categories, loan costs and other costs. And the main thing that we add in this section is these additional columns out to the right: borrower paid, seller paid, and paid by others. And then borrower paid and seller paid are broken down even further into at closing and before closing. So you show the responsible party for that fee and then when that party paid it. Anything payable by the lender goes into paid by others. So if you have something payable by the lender, specific lender credit, that fee moves over into paid by others, and then there'll be a little indication in L, in parentheses, something along those lines that will indicate that that item is actually paid by the lender. Page 3 of the closing disclosure, and this page resembles some ways our current HUD-1, especially in that summaries of transactions section. So the second 2/3 of that page, summaries of transaction, very similar to what we have currently on the HUD-1. The big changes are taking place in that calculating cash to close table at the top. Our HUD-1 currently has a comparison table. This is somewhat like that comparison table, but not as functional or as useful. Unfortunately, this calculating cash to close table doesn't give you as much information as to what specific fees change. Because if you really study this calculating cash to close table, you'll see it's a lot of subtotals or general categories that are being compared. So all you can really see is when a general category changed or was updated. You can't really tell what fees were updated or changed, and so you don't have an easy way to read it, know what changed, and see if there are any cures or tolerance violations for those updates. Page 4. Page 4 is a wall of text, mostly disclosures and disclaimers. Nothing, too involved as far as real estate agents will need to look at, but more information for them. Kind of the key sections on here, I think, are going to be the escrow section, telling them a little bit more information about their escrows, if they are escrowing, and if they're not escrowing, the actual cost of those non-escrowed fees, and then any escrow waiver fee applicable for not having escrows. Then the very final page of the closing disclosure. Here you'll find a lot of the TIL stuff that we're used to seeing right now. It comes back on this closing disclosure and shows up here: finance charge, amount financed, APR, and also that new tip percentage that we talked about earlier. So contact information there at the bottom for the different parties on the transaction. And once again, there can be a confirm receipt line at the very bottom. Closing disclosure, so that's what it looks like. What is the timing around that document? Well, this is what's received a lot of the discussion, a lot of the attention. The CD, or this closing disclosure, must be received by the borrower at least 3 days prior to closing. Right now, we're used to the borrower getting that HUD-1 and final TIL at the actual closing table day of closing, but now this is going to be backed up 3 days, and this CD will be provided to the borrower at least 3 days prior to closing. There's no exceptions to that, no ifs, ands, or buts. It must be at least 3 business days prior to closing. A note on mailing or emailing: if you do that, if that is the method that the lender delivers that CD in, there is a 3 additional wait period. The reason for that is under the rule, if you mail something or email something, you have to wait 3 days until receipt is then presumed. It's sometimes referred to as the mailbox rule. So if you mail something or email something, you wait 3 days, and then you can presume they received it. And then after that, the 3-day window, the 3-day cooling off period runs, and at that point, you can close. So if you mail or email, it will actually be a total of 6 days that you have to wait before you close. One key distinction, though, is if you have a eSign Act compliant disclosure system or an e-disclosure system that is eSign Act compliant, then that will allow you to speed up these timelines and let you document receipt from the borrower or get an electronic signature, and then at that point, your 3 days start. You don't have to wait those 3 additional days. So whichever lenders you work with, you'll want to confirm that they have an e-Sign Act compliant system. I can say that Renasant, at least, does have a fully e-Sign Act compliant e-disclosure system that will speed up these timelines. On purchase transactions, the settlement agent will provide a copy to the seller. That doesn't have to meet these 3-day timelines.